Have you ever thought that the ocean might see your pride? Madison, a woman whose beauty could make the whole world bow before her, believed that no one could ever reach her. Once upon a time, in a picturesque coastal region of San Francisco, there lived a woman named Madison, renowned not only for her exceptional beauty, but also for her luxurious lifestyle that few could dare to dream of. Madison's skin glistened like polished mahogany kissed by the sun, smooth and flawless. Her eyes were as deep as the ocean, exuding charm and mystery, but with a hint of coldness that made people hesitant to look directly into them. Madison didn't walk like ordinary people. Each step she took seemed to proclaim that the world should be grateful for her presence. Her towering high heels clicked rhythmically on cobblestone streets, as if to remind everyone of her existence. Madison wasn't just known, she was the center of attention. She was the wife of Tyler, a wealthy businessman frequently away on international business trips. While Tyler toiled to build his career, Madison lived like a queen in their castle-like mansion. Perched atop a seaside cliff, their mansion was surrounded by towering wrought-iron gates adorned with intricate designs, as if to assert its exclusive grandeur. The mansion wasn't merely a home. It was a symbol of opulence and power. Inside, the rooms were adorned with imported furniture, glittering crystal chandeliers, and rare works of art. But outside, Madison loved standing on the balcony, gazing out at the vast ocean. She didn't admire the sea for its tranquility. Instead, it made her feel superior, as if the vast ocean was insignificant compared to her. Madison wasn't just beautiful. She knew she was beautiful, and she wielded that beauty like a weapon. Each day, she appeared in town wearing the most dazzling dresses tailored by renowned designers. Her jewelry didn't just sparkle, they seemed to glow, emphasizing that Madison was unlike anyone else. However, the most unforgettable thing about her wasn't her flawless appearance, but the arrogance radiating from her every gesture and glance. She viewed the people around her as blurred paintings in a gallery, not remarkable enough to capture her attention. The household staff always kept their distance, bowing their heads and avoiding her gaze whenever she walked by. Madison didn't need to speak. Her gaze alone silently declared, "You exist solely to serve me." The valley where Madison lived, though beautiful, was a place where simplicity thrived. The locals were accustomed to sharing their lives through warm conversations at the market. Madison was a stark contrast to that atmosphere. She didn't visit the market to shop because everything she needed was delivered to her doorstep. She also didn't attend town gatherings. As to Madison, such trivial chatter wasn't worth her time. "Who does she think she is?" muttered a fishmonger at the market. "A queen without a throne," another person chimed in. The murmurs grew louder. Though people feared Madison, they began to find her arrogance intolerable. But Madison didn't care. To her, envious whispers were merely proof of her superiority. Tyler, her husband, was often away, but that didn't bother Madison. In fact, she preferred his absence. To Madison, Tyler was merely a source of funding for her lavish lifestyle. Love? She believed she didn't need it. In Madison's eyes, love was secondary, while power and beauty were her true weapons. However, on some nights, when the mansion became too quiet, Madison felt a gnawing emptiness creeping into her heart. She had everything, yet no one truly stood by her side. Her friends, if they could be called that, were merely companions for her extravagant parties. When the lights dimmed and the guests departed, Madison was left alone, a proud queen in her lonely castle. Click follow on the African Tales Best channel to continue exploring the captivating twists in this story. One day, as usual, Madison decided to make an appearance in town. Not to shop, not to socialize, but to do what she loved most, showing off. It was a brilliant morning, with sunlight streaming through the trees and dancing on the waves that kissed the sandy shore. Madison chose a luxurious dress that shimmered like the morning sun, its every detail designed to reflect her perfection. Her gleaming high heels clicked against the cobblestone streets, like a melody composed just for the self-proclaimed queen of the seaside town. She walked as if every gaze belonged to her, and indeed, they did. Some eyes were filled with admiration, others with envy, and still others with disdain. But Madison didn't care. In her mind, attention, whether positive or negative, was proof of her prominence. Madison stepped into the seaside market, where the air was thick with the scent of salt, fresh fish, and the lively chatter of merchants. The fishy smell, the laughter, and voices, it all failed to bother her. To Madison, this was just another stage for her to shine. The vendors momentarily paused their work as she walked past, whispering among themselves and casting furtive glances at the woman in the dazzling dress, standing out amidst a market full of simply dressed, hard-working people. As Madison passed a fish stall, an elderly man with thin silver hair struggled to lift a heavy crate of fish. His trembling hands gripped the crate tightly, but the weight caused him to lose balance. In an instant, he stumbled and fish water splashed out, staining Madison's sparkling dress with unsightly marks. The market fell silent. Everyone held their breath, their eyes fixed on Madison, who stood frozen, her face flushed with anger. She didn't need to say anything. Her piercing glare made it clear to everyone that a storm was brewing. "What do you think you're doing?" Madison's voice rang out sharp and cutting through the stillness like a knife. "Do you even know how expensive this dress is, or are you too poor to comprehend that?" She pointed at the fish water stains on her dress, as if they were evidence of an unforgivable crime. Her cutting words not only left the old man bewildered, but also sent a chill down the spines of those around her. The old man, still seated on the ground, looked up at her. His eyes weren't just old, they were deep, as though carrying the weight of the ocean itself. His voice was gentle, but resonated like the sound of waves. "Be careful with your words, young lady. You've insulted not just me, but the sea itself." Madison burst out laughing, a harsh and mocking sound. "The sea?" she scoffed, raising an eyebrow and curling her lips into a smug smile. "I fear nothing. Even the sea must bow to my grandeur." Her words echoed, as if to assert that neither nature nor humanity could touch her. Madison believed that the world, both its people and its forces, was meant to submit to her beauty and power. With a cold glance at the old man, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a market filled with astonished and uneasy faces. The old man didn't hurry to get up. Instead, he shook his head quietly, his gaze contemplative. Watching Madison's proud figure fade into the distance, he murmured, just loud enough for a few nearby to hear, "Her pride will be judged by the sea." Madison didn't look back. She didn't hear the old man's words, or if she did, she dismissed them as meaningless ramblings. But as the old man disappeared into the crowd, a cold breeze swept through the market, lifting tablecloths and sending shivers down everyone's spines. Madison felt it too, but she quickly reassured herself. "It's just the ocean wind," she thought. Though deep inside, an inexplicable unease crept into her mind. It wasn't fear. Madison didn't fear anything. It was a sense of foreboding, as if she had stepped through a door she was never meant to open. That afternoon, when Madison returned to her cliffside mansion, she noticed something strange. The sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below seemed louder, more forceful than usual. They were no longer just the soothing sounds of nature, but seemed almost like whispers, an unrelenting melody she couldn't quite decipher. That night, the sky over San Francisco was filled with moonlight, gentle yet cold. Madison sat on a long chair near the window, her gaze drifting toward the ocean. The moonlight reflected off the water, creating shimmering beams like thousands of diamonds dancing on the surface. Yet instead of feeling at peace, Madison felt an inexplicable unease in her heart. Then, from afar, the sound of the waves suddenly fell silent, replaced by a strange noise. A soft, haunting melody echoed, beautiful yet chilling, like a call from another world. The song seemed to merge with the wind, smooth but resonant, almost as if it were calling her name. "Madison," she shivered, her eyes snapping away from the scene outside the window. "It's just my imagination," she whispered, trying to convince herself she hadn't heard anything. But her heart began to race, and a vague chill crept across her skin. Madison drew the curtains shut and told herself, "I need to sleep." She walked into her bedroom, where the soft glow of the bedside lamp bathed everything in a warm golden hue. The large bed, draped with silky sheets, seemed to invite her to surrender to sleep. But as soon as she lay down, an unsettling sensation washed over her. A cold draft brushing against her neck, as if someone had exhaled lightly behind her. Madison jolted upright, her eyes wide, scanning the room. Everything remained still. There was no one. Nothing out of place, but just as she was about to lie back down, her gaze landed on the floor in the center of the room. A small, clear puddle of water had appeared. Frowning, Madison's mind raced. Where did this water come from? The windows are closed and no one else has been in here but me. Instead of investigating, she brushed it off, convincing herself she must have spilled it without realizing it. Grabbing a towel, she wiped it up and climbed back into bed. Even with the lamp still on, the sense of unease refused to leave Madison. She tossed and turned, her wide eyes fixed on the ceiling, straining to catch the faintest sound. The air in the room felt heavier, as if something unseen was silently present. In the nights that followed, Madison's anxiety grew stronger. Each time she closed her eyes, she was drawn into strange, terrifying dreams. She dreamed of sinking deeper and deeper into the ocean, a cold, dark abyss where no light could reach. Around her stretched endless darkness, punctuated only by the faint sound of waves and eerie whispers echoing in her mind. You have insulted us. Now you will bear the consequences. Madison tried to scream, but her throat felt tight. No sound escaped, as if the dream itself was holding her captive. She looked down at her legs and gasped in horror as they began to change. Gleaming scales, sparkling like fish scales, started to appear, creeping up her legs. Madison panicked, her hands clawing at her skin, trying to tear away the transformation, but the more she struggled, the deeper she sank into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, crashing into her mind like waves. You will pay. There is no escape. Madison woke up in the middle of the night, her body drenched in sweat. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath ragged as if she had been running for her life. She scanned the bedroom, her eyes landing once again on the floor, where the puddle had returned. This time the water wasn't clear. Madison thought she saw it moving, tiny ripples forming on its surface. She stepped back, fear gripping her, but her eyes remained fixed on the unsettling sight. I'm dreaming. This isn't real, she whispered, but the voice in her mind couldn't dispel the terror she felt. She placed a trembling hand over her chest, trying to steady her breath, but when she looked up, her reflection in the mirror across the room froze her in place. The eyes staring back at her from the mirror weren't her own. They were a deep, piercing blue, the color of the ocean, cold and foreign. Madison stumbled backward, her hands shaking, and the bedside lamp flickered before going out completely. The room plunged into darkness. From that night on, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer alone. Every step she took within her cliffside mansion was accompanied by the oppressive weight of an invisible gaze. Each time she passed a mirror, she avoided looking into it, terrified of seeing those strange eyes again. But it didn't stop there. Night after night, her dreams grew more vivid. She no longer just saw herself sinking into the ocean. She could feel the icy water enveloping her body, hear the relentless crash of waves in her ears. The whispers became clearer, sharper, like daggers stabbing into her thoughts. You cannot escape. The sea does not forget. One night, Madison dreamed she was standing on the cliff where her mansion stood. Below her stretched the ocean, dark and furious. The waves surged higher, slamming against the cliffs as if trying to swallow everything whole. But in the dream, Madison wasn't alone. Before her, a shadowy figure emerged from the mist. It was a woman, but unlike anyone Madison had ever seen. Her long, wet hair fell past her shoulders, glinting like pearls. Her skin shimmered with a silver hue, and her eyes, deep, oceanic blue, burned with an indescribable rage. "Who do you think you are to defy us?" the woman said, her voice resonating like the crashing waves. Madison couldn't answer, only stepping back in fear. But with every step she took, the woman moved closer, as if the distance between them didn't exist. Your pride will drown you, Madison. Remember that. Madison screamed, but the dream dissolved. She woke up, curled into herself on the bed, her hands clutching the sheets. Outside, the waves continued their relentless assault on the cliffs. But Madison no longer saw them as a beautiful backdrop. They were a warning, a reminder that the ocean never forgets, and it was waiting for her. One morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating Madison's luxurious bedroom. Everything seemed normal, but she felt that her body was not the same. Slowly, she pulled back the blanket, exposing her legs to the soft light. And then, to her horror, something shocking appeared before her eyes. On her skin, tiny shimmering scales, delicate like fish scales, were clearly visible. Madison screamed, her voice echoing through the mansion. She couldn't believe her eyes. Each scale reflected the light in a strange, almost unnatural way, as if they didn't belong to a human body. A cold shiver ran down her spine and her mind spun with a whirlwind of unanswered questions. "This can't be. It's not real," Madison whispered, her voice trembling. She hurriedly grabbed a long stocking and pulled it up, covering her legs. But it didn't stop there. A strange, heavy sensation emerged in her abdomen. Madison placed her hand on her stomach and was horrified to find it swelling, as though something was inside, not life, but something alive, moving, undulating like ocean waves. Madison sat frozen on the bed, her eyes fixed on her stomach. She touched the taut skin, feeling as though it no longer belonged to her. The small rhythmic movements beneath her skin terrified her. "This isn't real. It's just a dream," she reassured herself. But when she looked at her trembling hands, she knew it was no dream. She rushed to the bathroom, splashing water on her face, but her reflection in the mirror only deepened her fear. Madison saw herself pale, her eyes sunken, and her stomach swollen and seemingly larger by the minute. Without hesitation, Madison decided to visit a doctor. Clad in a long dress and a thick coat, she tried to conceal the abnormalities in her body. As she walked through the streets, she kept her head down, avoiding anyone's gaze. But deep down, she knew she couldn't hide the changes forever. At the clinic, Madison waited, each second feeling like an eternity. When her turn came, she explained everything to the doctor, but with each word she said, his eyes reflected more confusion. He examined her, conducted a series of tests and scans, and after hours of waiting, he returned with her results in hand. "Your results are completely normal," he said gravely. "There's no sign of pregnancy, no foreign objects in your abdomen. All your indicators are stable." Madison stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible! Look at me!" she shouted, pointing at her stomach. "This isn't normal! Can't you see it?" The doctor looked at her sympathetically, but his tone softened, as if he were trying to comfort a patient with psychological issues. "This may be some form of psychosomatic condition. You need rest, Madison." Madison left the clinic in a state of utter confusion. Outside, the sun was still shining brightly, but to her, everything seemed cloaked in shadow. In the days that followed, the strange changes in her body only grew worse. The scales on her legs seemed to spread, becoming more pronounced, and every time she touched them, they felt cold like ice. Her stomach continued to swell, making it harder and harder to hide. Though she tried to avoid the gazes of others, Madison's transformation couldn't escape the notice of the small town. Rumors began to spread. "What did Madison do to end up like that?" one woman whispered after seeing Madison in a long dress concealing her legs. "I heard the ocean is punishing her for her arrogance," another replied solemnly. "She looks cursed. She must have offended someone, or something." Madison quickly became the center of gossip. The admiring looks she once received were now replaced by curiosity and fear. The once proud Madison, who strode through the marketplace with her head held high, no longer dared to leave her mansion. The grand mansion, once a symbol of power and luxury, now became a prison of isolation. Madison no longer felt safe there. Every night she lay on her opulent yet cold bed, listening to the waves crashing against the cliffs below. Those sounds were no longer a soothing melody that lulled her to sleep. They became ominous, as if the sea were whispering something she couldn't understand. The gazes of others, once filled with admiration, now heavy with curiosity and contempt, were unbearable. The once luxurious mansion atop the cliff, a monument to Madison's power and beauty, had become a cage for her loneliness and fear. She no longer dared to look in the mirror, afraid she wouldn't recognize herself. Every night she lay alone in her massive bed, listening to the waves pound against the cliffside. But those sounds were no longer a lullaby. They became haunting whispers, like the voices from her bizarre dreams. You must pay. There is no escape. As the weeks went by, Madison's stomach continued to swell, and the movements within became unmistakably clear. She could feel gentle waves rippling beneath her skin, as though the ocean itself was alive inside her. She remembered the old man at the market, his gentle yet weighty words. You've insulted not just me, but the sea itself. Madison began to believe that the strange occurrences in her body were no coincidence. She realized that perhaps the ocean hadn't forgiven her arrogance. The town's rumors grew harsher. They no longer just questioned Madison. They condemned her. She always thought she was better than everyone. Look at her now. Serves her right, a man said loudly at a cafe. What did she do to end up cursed like this? She must have offended someone, another chimed in. Madison couldn't escape the whispers. Even the servants in her home, who once bowed to her every command, now looked at her differently. Their respect had vanished, replaced by curiosity and disdain. One evening, Madison stood by the window, gazing down at the small town where she had once been the center of admiration. The golden lights of the homes below now seemed like watchful eyes judging her. She closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "Why me?" she whispered, but the answer never came. Madison, who once walked with such pride as if the world itself should bow before her, was now just a shadow of her former self, shunned and cast out from the life she once reveled in. She was mocked, avoided, and ultimately abandoned. Her husband's family, who had never truly accepted her, wasted no time in calling Tyler back. When Tyler returned and faced Madison, he couldn't hide his anger. His face flushed red and his eyes burned with fury. "What is this, Madison? Explain yourself!" Tyler shouted, pointing at her swollen belly. "Tyler, I don't know what's happening. Please believe me." Madison fell to her knees, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I swear I've done nothing wrong. I've never betrayed you." But her words fell on deaf ears. Tyler wouldn't listen. Or perhaps he didn't want to. "You think I'll believe you? Look at your stomach. What have you done? What did you do to end up like this?" Madison reached for his hand, but Tyler yanked it away, recoiling as if she was something vile. "Enough! Madison, I can't take this anymore. You need to leave, now!" With those words, Madison was cast out of the mansion, a place that had once been a symbol of her grandeur, but was now a shattered dream. Madison wandered the streets of the town, clutching her swollen belly she couldn't explain, her red-rimmed eyes filled with tears. Passers-by stopped to look at her, but not with compassion. Their gazes were filled with mockery and disdain. As she passed through the marketplace, the stage where she had once displayed her supposed superiority, Madison heard sneers and whispers of derision. "Look at her. Her husband's been abroad for months. Whose child is that?" one woman said, her tone dripping with malice. "She thought she was a queen. And now, just a beggar with a strange belly," another sneered. The women Madison had once looked down upon couldn't hide their glee. They threw scornful glances her way as if justice had finally been served. Some even went out of their way to toss scraps of bread or leftover food at her feet, laughing as they said, "Maybe she needs this now." With nowhere left to go, Madison was forced to sleep outdoors. She found a hidden corner under the eaves of a cave near the sea, a place where few would notice her. The sea breeze blew through, carrying the biting chill of the night. Madison curled up tightly, trying to keep warm with her tattered dress, but the cold seeped into her very bones. She lay there staring up at the night sky, where thousands of stars sparkled as if mocking her from above. Tears streamed down her cheeks, merging with the cold wind. Madison, once the most admired woman in town, was now a nobody, forgotten by the world. Why? She whispered into the darkness, her voice breaking. Why has it come to this? In the loneliness of the night, Madison couldn't stop herself from replaying memories of her past. The image of the old man in the marketplace appeared vividly in her mind, along with his gentle but weighty words. Pride comes before the fall. Madison had laughed at those words, dismissing them as hollow musings of a poor old man. But now, they echoed in her head like a prophecy she couldn't escape. For the first time in her life, Madison admitted the truth she had long tried to ignore. Her pride had led her here. "I was wrong," Madison whispered, her voice weak, but filled with a sincerity she had never felt before. "Please forgive me." Her words dissolved into the darkness with no reply. Only the distant sound of waves crashing echoed, a reminder that she could never escape the price of her arrogance. Madison fell asleep inside the cave, only to be awakened by the faint light of the moon. Outside, a woman stood, but she was unlike any woman Madison had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like silver. Her long, flowing hair gleamed like a cascading stream. And her eyes, deep, ocean blue, were full of mystery and danger. Madison froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't take her eyes off the strange woman whose ethereal beauty was both captivating and terrifying. "Who are you?" Madison asked, her voice trembling as if every word she spoke was a heavy weight. The woman stared directly at Madison and smiled, but the smile carried no warmth. It was cold, sharp like a blade slicing through the air. "I am the one you insulted," the woman said, her voice soft yet resounding like the waves crashing on the shore. "The sea does not forget those who dare to challenge it." Madison felt her entire body stiffen. The woman's words cut into her mind like a dagger. She took a step back, but the woman's gaze remained fixed on her. "The sea?" Madison whispered, confusion overtaking her. Then she realized this was no ordinary woman. This was a mermaid, but not the sweet, enchanting mermaid of fairy tales Madison had heard of. Her eyes burned with anger, not gentleness. Her long, gleaming hair swayed slightly in the sea breeze, but it was not a warm breeze. It was cold, carrying the scent of the ocean depths. "You insulted the sea," the mermaid said, her voice low and commanding, like waves surging beneath Madison's feet. "Now you will feel its power." Madison trembled, her legs seemingly frozen. I don't know what I did. I didn't mean to," she stammered, her voice weak, but the mermaid didn't let her finish. "Your belly," she said, her gaze piercing Madison, "does not carry life. It carries the weight of guilt. Every drop of arrogance you have hoarded will become water, and it will drown you." Madison stepped back, her heart pounding, but her legs wouldn't obey her. The mermaid's words echoed in her mind, like waves relentlessly crashing against the shore. "I don't understand," Madison sobbed. "I don't know what I've done to deserve this. Please forgive me." The mermaid stepped forward, yet her feet never touched the ground. She had no legs. Instead, a long, shimmering silver tail extended behind her, as if it were crafted from thousands of drops of water. She didn't answer Madison immediately, but stared at her, her eyes cold as the ocean depths, devoid of emotion. "Forgiveness? The sea does not forgive so easily, Madison," the mermaid said, her voice carrying an undeniable authority. "You've lived your life with arrogance, looking down on everyone. Now, you must pay the price." Madison felt as though the ground beneath her had vanished. Every word from the mermaid was a direct blow to her heart. "But I didn't mean to," Madison screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know what I did could anger the sea. Please, I'll make it right." This time the mermaid laughed. The sound echoed cold and haunting like a chilling wind from the abyss of the ocean. "Make it right?" She raised an eyebrow, her eyes glinting strangely. "No one can make amends with the sea. You cannot undo what has been done. You can only learn to endure the consequences, the price of arrogance and disdain for others." "Look at your belly, Madison," the mermaid continued, her voice a whisper that somehow reverberated through the entire cave. It doesn't hold life, it is a symbol of your pride. It is a reminder that the sea does not forget. Madison lowered her gaze to her swollen belly, and for the first time she could clearly feel the movements within. It wasn't life. It was small, rolling waves, twisting and rippling as if the ocean itself had taken residence inside her body. "Please, I'll do anything. Please forgive me," Madison whispered, her voice choked with emotion. But the mermaid did not reply. Madison knelt before the mermaid, her trembling hands clutching the hem of her dress. The mermaid's deep blue eyes seemed to peer into her soul, unraveling every secret, every mistake. Her voice, both gentle and piercing, resonated through the air. "You will be forgiven, but only if you pass the trial." Madison lifted her head, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "What trial? Please tell me, I'll do anything." "Do good deeds. Help those you once scorned," the mermaid said, her words like whispers of the sea breeze. "If you fail, I will take away all the beauty you've always prided yourself on." Madison bowed her head, her voice breaking. I accept." The mermaid said nothing more. She nodded slightly and with a graceful motion disappeared into the night, leaving Madison standing there, her heart heavy with fear and regret. The next day, Madison began her trial. Once a woman who walked with her head held high above others, she now had to humble herself to assist them. She started with small acts, buying food for the poor at the market, spending time caring for the elderly, and even personally cleaning streets she once ignored. For the first time in her life, Madison experienced what it meant to work selflessly for others. Those she had once scorned now looked at her with astonishment, and slowly their resentment began to fade. "She's truly changing," a woman at the market whispered as she watched Madison hand bread to a hungry child. Over those days, Madison not only performed acts of kindness but also learned to face herself. She was no longer the arrogant woman she had been. Each time she glimpsed her reflection in a mirror, she remembered the mermaid's warning, driving her to try harder. Exactly 1 month later, on a full moon night, Madison sat by the window, gazing at the moonlight shimmering on the sea. She didn't know if her efforts had been enough to atone for her sins, but she knew she had given everything she could. Suddenly, the sound of the waves grew stronger, and a voice echoed, soft yet filled with authority. "You have completed the trial." Madison turned, and once more the mermaid appeared under the moonlight, her beauty as radiant as the first time Madison had seen her. "You have learned your lesson, Madison. Forgiveness is yours. But remember, arrogance can always return." Madison bowed deeply, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right." The mermaid smiled, this time without the coldness she once carried. She turned, merged into the waves, and vanished forever. From that day forward, Madison was no longer the arrogant woman she had been. She spent her time helping the poor and lived a humble and grateful life. Stories of her transformation spread throughout the town, becoming a vivid lesson for anyone blinded by pride. One day, while walking through the market, Madison saw the old man she had once insulted. He was sitting by a small stall, his frail hands resting on his cane. Madison stopped, her legs no longer trembling with fear but with gratitude. She bowed deeply before him, tears falling like rain. "Thank you for your valuable lesson. Without you, I would never have realized my mistakes." The old man looked at her, his kind eyes shining with understanding. His smile was like sunlight breaking through after a storm. "You have learned," he said, his voice warm like the gentle sound of waves. "May your story teach others." Another day, while Madison sat huddled outside a small church, a kind-hearted woman stopped beside her. The woman carried a basket of bread, her eyes glowing with sincerity. "You need more than food," the woman said, handing Madison a loaf of bread. "Come into the church. The pastor here can help you." Madison hesitated, but the woman's genuine gaze ignited a small spark of hope within her. She stood and walked into the church, where light streaming through stained glass windows painted colourful patterns on the floor. The pastor, a man with a kind face and warm eyes, approached her. Madison shared her entire story, from her arrogance and punishment to the good deeds she had done to atone. The pastor listened without interrupting, his eyes full of compassion. "My daughter, your pride has wronged others, but God is merciful. If you truly repent, He will forgive you." The church community gathered around Madison, praying together. Their prayers echoed, blending with the soft light of the church, creating a sacred atmosphere. Madison felt a warmth spreading through her body, starting from her head and flowing down to her stomach, where the excruciating pain had taken hold. And then, a black mist escaped her body, dissolving into the air. Madison collapsed, but this time, it wasn't from pain. It was from release. When she woke, Madison looked down at her stomach. It had returned to normal. She wept, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. "Thank you. And thank God," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. The pastor smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "My daughter, this is not the end. You must live a life of humility and gratitude and never return to your old path." She reached out and touched her leg, feeling the smooth skin as it had been before. A sense of relief washed over her. Madison sat up abruptly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you. Thank you, Ocean, for forgiving me," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with genuine gratitude. The people in the church looked at her with gentle eyes. They had witnessed a miracle, not one born of man, but of true repentance. From that day forward, Madison became a different person. She lived humbly, no longer consumed by arrogance. The remaining wealth she once used to flaunt her opulence was now spent helping the poor in the town. Madison often visited the seaside market, the stage that had once showcased her pride. But now she no longer walked with her head held high and a cold gaze. She came with a warm heart, helping the women she had once scorned. She bought food for struggling families, gave money to those in need, and even carried heavy loads, assisting those working tirelessly in the market. "She's really changed," a woman whispered as she watched Madison wipe the sweat off her forehead after helping carry a load. "Indeed, perhaps the ocean truly taught her a lesson," another remarked, her voice tinged with admiration. One day, as she walked through the market, Madison saw the old man she had once insulted. He was sitting by a small fish stall, his kind eyes filled with thought. Madison stopped, her legs seemingly refusing to move. Memories of that fateful day flooded back, the harsh words she had spoken echoing in her mind. Her heart tightened and tears welled up. The old man looked at her, his gentle eyes shining with warmth. His smile was soft but full of meaning. "You've learned your lesson," he said, his voice deep and soothing like the sound of waves. "Let your story teach others, so they don't walk the path you once did." Madison nodded, tears streaming freely. Her heart overflowed with gratitude. From that day, Madison's story became a legend. The townsfolk shared the tale of the once arrogant woman who had been punished by the ocean and ultimately forgiven. Her story served not only as a cautionary tale, but also as a vivid lesson on the perils of pride and the power of humility. Yet something strange lingered. Despite Madison living a meaningful life, there were things that couldn't be explained. On full moon nights, some claimed they could hear the waves whispering her name. Others swore they had seen the silhouette of the mermaid from afar, her ocean blue eyes watching over Madison. Could it be that the ocean still kept an eye on her, as a reminder that forgiveness was never unconditional? Madison's story invites us to reflect. Are we letting pride blind our hearts? Do we have the courage to recognize our mistakes and make amends before it's too late? Share your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think about the ocean's forgiveness? Do you believe we're always given a second chance if we truly repent? If you enjoy meaningful, mysterious stories like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our tales. And remember to share this video with your friends and family in the US to spread this valuable lesson about humility and forgiveness.